It's quite a sunny Saturday morning, glorious actually, and yet here I am writing a review because I apparently still haven't learned how to enjoy the weather without turning it into content. Today we are looking at an IEM from one of the companies that participated in the Planar wars of old. Well, old meaning maybe 2 years ago, which in audio time is basically ancient history. Let's jump in. Here is the Astralis, a new one from LetShuoer, featuring an interesting planar setup. Of course, we'll start with the unboxing because apparently we all still pretend this is deep inside when it's mostly just plastic and promises. Whoa! The sleeves of this box is quite unlike what you have been getting of late. By now, you should be desensitized to the usual formula, either a product render glaring at you or some kind of anime waifu trying to sell you a frequency response. The Astralis basically says no to all that, opting instead for a minimalist sunrise or planetary landscape. It's not exactly groundbreaking, but it is quite refreshing, like a quiet corner at a very loud party. At the back of the box, you'll find the specifications, and they are being extremely inclusive by presenting them in 3 languages, because one language just isn't enough when you are trying to sell a tiny chunk of metal to the entire planet. Inside, you'll see the IEMs, but more on that later. You'll also get the plastic pub case, which feels quite delightful. It's certainly not the most premium, but for an affordable-ish IEM, it's not half bad. Inside that, you get a full array of accessories, 2 different types of ear tips, a silver-plated copper cable, interchangeable plugs, and a 3.5mm USB-C dongle. Perfect if you are one of those wise ones who wants to start at a slightly higher level, or at least pretend that you did. Let's talk about build quality. The chassis of the Astralis is made from metal, and it certainly looks like it was cast, which gives it a certain permanent leaning vibe. I like how dimensional the faceplate is. There's a raised section and a more recessed area that carries the same minimalist motifs as seen as the box. It feels nice and solid as well, the kind of thing that can probably survive a punch or two, either from a fall or from your own frustration. Inside the chassis is where the new magic happens. This uses a ring-type planar driver, which is quite different from your typical blade-style planar drivers that you usually see. It uses ring magnets, and the way that the diaphragm is suspended in the magnetic field is slightly different, which basically means that they move the jazz around and call it an upgrade. And as a result, it is larger, 15.5mm compared to the more common 14-ish implementations, because bigger is always better until it isn't. The cable is something we have seen before from them. It's silver-plated copper finish in a warm silver and a brown tone. It's relatively easy to manage, which is nice because nobody actually wants decorative tangling as a feature. You also get interchangeable plugs, 3.5mm and 4.4mm, so you can basically swap to whatever your dongle or amp have, which is a small luxury in a world of unnecessary incompatibility. Next up, sound. For this review, I used the Lotu Monia, which is frankly overkill for this set, so drive is absolutely no issue here. The Astralis features a sub-bass leaning V-shaped signature, which is quite different from what's popular lately, which is usually code for what everybody else is doing. There's certainly more sub-bass here compared to other planar sets out there. Timbre-wise, it retains that familiar planar linearity, and the increased sub-bass presence actually helps balance out the usual upper mid-range emphasis you get with planar IEMs, which is a neat trick. That said, the overall tonality leans slightly thin, like a very thin slice of salami. It's crisp but not quite full-bodied, which is a polite way of saying it never fully commits to being warm. Starting with bass, the sub-bass is forward and plentiful. You can easily appreciate the bits on the Astralis, and it's clearly elevated, as expected from planar. The bass response is linear, though I do feel it could benefit from about a 3 dB lift in the mid-bass to add more body to the overall sound. Resolution here is decent. General details come through clearly, but I did find myself wishing for a bit more texture, like something you can actually chew on. Dynamics are respectable. You can hear it when the bass drops, but it does feel slightly restrained compared to dynamic drivers. Impact is a touch soft, though importantly, there's no bleed into the mids, so at least the bass stays in its lane and doesn't interrupt the conversation. Moving into the mid-range, its presentation is clean and clear, which is nice. Female vocals sound good here with solid clarity and resolution. Male vocals, however, could use a bit more body, which quietly contributes to that slightly thin tonal character, like somebody speaking with conviction but forgot to bring the volume. Instruments are rendered faithfully, though again with a hint of thinness as if they were recorded in a slightly underfed frequency band. Treble is generally inoffensive, which is great. Planars used to have this reputation for harshness, and the world has slowly corrected that, at least on paper. Air is decent, though I personally would have liked a bit more extension. Cymbals come through crisp with an overall splashiness that peeks through here and there, and the upper harmonics, especially from the snares, are presented without being overly aggressive. It does not scream at you all the time, but sometimes it shows. Like a quiet person who remembers they are allowed to talk and then remembers they are still at the party. Soundstage, overall pretty decent. Think of a jazz club with a slightly taller ceiling than width. Depth is average and could benefit from more dynamic expression, but it's not a cramped space. Positioning, however, is good. Instruments are easy to locate, which is more than I can say for my own live choices. And next up, some comparisons versus the Kefine Arnar, which is a recent release featuring a hybrid setup, one planar and a balanced armature. The Astralis leans a bit further into party mode. The Arnar come across as a cleaner, more polished set. Its bass isn't as plentiful, but it's tighter, also more refined, and has better dynamics. It's also smoother across the board, which is the kind of smoothing that makes you feel like it actually read the manual and then practiced. The Astralis, on the other hand, offers more bass in general and presents treble with a bit more shimmer, which suit people who like their planars to feel a bit like portable speakers you can wear. So if you're looking for something more balanced and refined, go with the Arnar. If you want more bass presence and slightly thinner mids, then the Astralis is the one to consider because you apparently like compromise with a party atmosphere. Rating. Considering the build, which is solid, the cable, which feels quite premium, and the tuning, which caters well to those who want a sub-bass focused planar with a slightly thinner note, I would rate the LetShuoer Astralis a B-. It does a few things well and a few things only well enough, which is a very honest way to describe most audio gear in this world. Once again, thanks so much for watching this week's episode of the Superchunk Super Audio Show. That's it from me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys soon, preferably in a parallel universe where reviews still matter. With that said, I hope to see you guys soon.